very nice to talk to you again, Jared.
Yes, nice to talk to you.
And congratulations on the success of the latest Amren conference.
Well, thank you very much. It was a bit of an effort to actually pull this conference off because, well, would you like to hear some of the background as to the legal difficulties we're having meeting at this site?
Give us the full story.
The full story. Well, as you can well imagine, whenever we meet to talk about interests, legitimate interests of whites as a group, we are met with demonstrators. And the state of Tennessee owns the facility that we have our meetings in. It's a state park called Montgomery Bell State Park. And we started meeting in this state park because whenever we tried to have a meeting at a privately owned hotel, there was so much pressure on the owners that they would cancel their contracts. And we would book maybe 150 rooms, all sorts of meals. The whole bill, everything included, would come to over $100,000, maybe close to $200,000, banquets and bar bills and things. But then instead of keeping our business, they would cancel the contract and actually pay us a substantial cancellation fee rather than go through the agony of having people demonstrate and walk through the halls distributing flyers. And we actually thought about going into business doing this, because we could have a conference or pretend to have a conference, and then when the hotel found out, they would cancel their contract. In any case, we don't do that. What we want to do is have a meeting. But the private sector is essentially closed to us. We can't hold a meeting, at least a publicly announced meeting, in a privately owned hotel because the pressure is so great. On the worst time, there were telephone calls into the hotel, and they said, if you let these Nazis meet, we will come in and shoot you. Now, I think it's very unlikely that anybody would come and shoot you, but if there were an incident, a hotel that had gotten a warning of that kind would have tremendous liability, as you can imagine. So we go to a state-owned facility, and a government-owned facility cannot discriminate. And if you call up the state of Tennessee and tell them, if you let these Nazis run around in this park, we will shoot you, you're more likely to be in considerable trouble. So they let us come. But we get this whole crazy gang of Antifa and lefties running around. And so the state of Tennessee spends a lot of money on protection, on security. And they've done this for several years now, and they are under orders from the state legislature to make a profit in the parks. And so they have started saying to us, well, look, we're going to charge you at least for part of this security. And the last time they wanted to charge us $35,000, $40,000 for security. Well, we can't afford to be doing that. And so we had to take them to federal court. And there is very clear legal precedent that they have no right to charge us for the behavior of others. So we had to go to court to make sure that we could hold this conference without being charged for security fees that are necessitated exclusively because of the behavior of people that hate us. So it's really been, we spent tens of thousands of dollars litigating this thing, but we hope that we are able to continue meeting in this state-owned facility.
And you have been organizing these conferences since, what is it, 1984 or something?
Well,
like
1994 was our first conference. And we've been meeting, this is our 8th conference in this state park. And the Antifa and leftist agitation has just gotten worse and worse. And they do spend an enormous amount of money maintaining the peace and providing security. I think they go too far. They have officers on horseback riding around in the woods. They have men on ATVs. They have a checkpoint when you go into the hotel in which they have metal detectors, and they wand everybody and search your bags. They really do spend too much money on this. But as they have said to us, they do not want another Charlottesville on their hands. And so it's better to have more protection than not enough protection. But they have been very successful at keeping the Antifa and the agitators and the protesters far away. In fact, many people seem to think, and I think it's right, that Montgomery Bell State Park, where we meet, is probably the safest place in the entire state of Tennessee while we are there.
Yeah, I can 100% agree to that. Having been there a couple of years ago, I hope to be able to visit next year. Let's see.
I hope you can. I hope you can too. You have a travel ban at this point. Is that the case?
Yeah, pretty much.
We all do.
And you have your travel ban to the Schengen zone.
That's right.
Which is a subject we haven't really broached in this program before. So, as I understand it, you were banned in like November last year for being scheduled as a speaker at a conference in Poland.
Well, it was an odd situation. I had spoken in Poland about a year and a half ago, no longer than maybe 2 years ago. And then I went back in September of 2018. And at that time, the sponsors of my talk were approached by Polish security. And the Polish security people explained to them that if I were to break any laws, I suppose they have hate speech laws, and they thought I might break some of them, that the sponsors would be held responsible. Of course, I broke no laws. But what we then did was change the venue. Instead of meeting where we had planned originally, we moved to a different location. And so I never had any contact with Polish security at all. But, and then after that, apparently it was at that time, in September 2018, that they put a Schengen ban on me. But curiously enough, I then went back to Europe after that and got through. And apparently, Schengen bans are not always effective. Depending on what country you go through, they pay attention to them or they don't pay attention to them. I understand that Greece and Italy are really rather lackadaisical about enforcing somebody else's Schengen ban. But the Swiss, which is where I landed this time around, the police at Zurich, they're a member of Schengen, even though they're not a member of the EU. They're very meticulous. So they're very Swiss about enforcing these bans. And so they sent me right back to the United States the very next day. And it was ironic that I was on my way to a conference in Stockholm about anarcho-tyranny. And anarcho-tyranny is a concept that was invented by my friend who died in 2005 named Samuel Francis, in which he pointed out that increasingly our rulers are unwilling or unable to control real criminals, but then they tyrannize the law-abiding. And this is a perfect example. Europe admits all sorts of criminals and people who hate Europe, lets them come into Europe. But someone like me who genuinely loves Europe and wants Europe to stay European, a law-abiding, completely peaceful person like me is kicked back at the border and not allowed to come. My ban is supposed to last for 3 years.
Yeah, it's completely insane. And I don't think we should be too harsh on the Poles for this, though. I mean, Hungary did the same to sponsor.
Yes.
Maybe they had stronger reasons to do so. What do I know? But than in your case. But in any case,
there's one thing here that's interesting. Yeah, because I was some time ago I was kicked out of a payment processor, and I thought, okay, well, somebody found out something. So I looked at the reasons behind it, and apparently their reason was that I'm on a list issued by the United States government that says I'm a person that shouldn't be allowed to use their services. So this goes way beyond just travel ban. This is something completely different, and I was thinking that maybe this whole situation stems from some sort of American intelligence operations. Maybe they contacted Schengen and put you on the list, because this is much deeper than just a regular travel ban. They are now they're not refusing to let me be on certain payment processor platforms because I'm on a list issued by the United States government. I'm essentially some sort of terrorist or something.
Well, I don't think that that's the case. I contacted the State Department, and the State Department knew nothing about this, and they said, if we have some kind of involvement in preventing travel, then we don't even let you leave the country. They would not have given me, let me aboard the plane. There would have been some sort of hold on me. They explained all that carefully and quite convincingly. I do believe that this was something that was initiated by the Poles. Now, why they would care about me, I don't know. My meetings in Poland were not public. It had not been written about by the press at all. It wasn't at all like that the meeting that Richard Spencer had in which it had been written about at great length in the paper, and that Viktor Orban himself had said, don't hold this meeting. It was very, very low key. No one knew about it. And so it's not as though there would be a lot of foreign pressure on Poland to ban me. So it's increasingly mysterious. And also, we have contacted the Polish embassy here in Washington. We've contacted the Ministry of the Interior in Poland. We've even translated documents into Polish and sent them to them and asked them what the heck is going on. What is it that I did? No reply at all. And I had no advance warning of this. It's really quite tyrannical and very annoying. Now, I must say that back in, I guess it was 2016, when I was banned from Britain, at least Theresa May, who was now the Prime Minister and was then Home Secretary, she at least had the courtesy to write me a letter and say, don't even try to come because we won't let you in. But the way the Poles did it, I had absolutely no idea. I'd bought a ticket, and then I get bounced back at the border. I waste all my time going there and coming back. At least the nation of my ancestry, the British, had the courtesy to tell me in advance that I shouldn't even bother to try coming to Britain.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They know, because some things have changed from 2012 till now. They know that nobody will be holding them accountable for banning people like yourself, for banning people like me. They won't be held accountable. On the other hand, they will get a pat on the back from the media, and Burger King will go out and tweet something about how Jared Taylor is a total fascist, and everybody who hates him get a free milkshake or something. I mean, it's absurd.
Well, you know, it all depends. I know that Geert Wilders was banned from Britain at one point, but then there were some British politicians who lobbied to have him let in, and he was allowed in. The same thing happened in the United States. If you have friends in high places who make a big enough stink, then they will let you in, or they will change their minds. In my case, as I say, there was no media coverage at all of my having been in Poland previously. As so far as I can tell, there was no reason at all that the United States government or anyone else would have even known that I'd been there. So it's not as though the Poles get some sort of pat on the back for keeping this notorious white supremacist bad guy out of their country. I really don't understand it, although I have...
Which is even more reason to believe that the American deep state might be involved. I mean, there is a blacklist. I mean, I know because I'm on it myself in Sweden. I'm not even allowed to have a bank account in Sweden because I'm on the same blacklist as ISIS leaders for being a white conservative.
But were you informed by the United States government that you could not come? How was this ban on you conveyed to you by the U.S. government?
Just that my ESTA permit was revoked. For undisclosed reasons.
Yeah.
But my plan is to just let this whole Charlottesville thing kind of die out in people's memory, and then I will appeal it, and then I can finally visit the US again.
Go to Las Vegas.
Well, my ban is supposed to expire in September of 2021. Also, I understand that theoretically it is possible to apply for a visa from a Schengen nation that is just for that nation. And I'm trying to get permission from France to go only to France this summer for a meeting that I've been invited to address. But so far, no one at the French embassy seems to understand what's going on. This is a very, very unusual procedure, as you can imagine. It's unusual to have someone who's got a total Schengen ban then approach one country and say, well, okay, you have the power to override that ban, at least for your own country. But legally, that is something that is possible. But the French are scratching their heads, and I suppose they they could consult with the Polish authorities, and they could say, well, the Poles think you're no good, and we think you're no good too. But so far, I've just had no good answer to our approach to the French.
But Spencer tried to do something similar when he was planning to come to Sweden to give a speech last year, and he was still stopped on the way in Iceland and sent back. And he had been in contact with the Swedish embassy before, and they said it was fine. He could come. I don't know if he got an actual visa,
But you see, you have to get, as I understand it, you have to get an airport visa, even for a nation in which you're only catching an airplane. So in order to do it properly, once Iceland is part of Schengen, I gather, and as soon as he got to Iceland, the Schengen ban applied. And so even if you're only changing planes in a place, if you have got a visa for your ultimate destination, but you have a Schengen ban, then the place where you're changing planes is supposed to turn you around and send you home.
Interesting. I had no idea about that. But in any case, we should try to get your ban lifted. And we'll, I guess we will have reasons to get back to this issue as things progress. I hope we will get some updates for you soon. Both me and my colleagues here in Poland are working on investigating what actually happened and who requested the ban and so forth. But it's not so easy, but I think we're making some progress. But anyways, to get back to a more white-pilled topic, the latest American Renaissance Conference, which was hugely popular. I've read lots of really good reviews. And I mean, was it as big as it was in 2017? Or and how would you say that the speakers compared to previous conferences in terms of quality?
Well, it was probably somewhat fewer than in 2017. 2017, we actually had to turn people away. And we had pretty much the capacity that the room can hold. The room could probably have held maybe another 15 or 20 people, but then it begins to get uncomfortable. There is the fire code there that means you can't have more than about 300 people. But we sort of started we charged more this time, and we were almost discouraging people because we didn't want it to get too crowded. I'm convinced that if we could hold these conferences at a place that was very convenient to an international airport, and people could fly in and then just take a shuttle bus to the conference center, rather than, as in the case in Tennessee, as you know, Daniel, you have to show up at the airport and then rent a car, or it's a long Uber drive. It's quite inconvenient to get to Montgomery Bell. It's a beautiful place, but not convenient. It's the middle of the country in a sort of a weird place. I think if we could do it the way we used to do it, when back before it became impossible for us to meet in private hotels, we could have as many as 400 people. I think we'd have no difficulty having 500 people. But again, the protesters have made it impossible to do that. Now, as far as the speakers are concerned, I thought we had excellent speakers, as usual. Some are better than others. This is the first time that we had Joseph Alsop speak. He was perhaps the most popular of the speakers. He's just a young 23-year-old guy, but he now has more than 500,000 YouTube subscribers. He's had tens of millions of views. He's one of these natural orators who gave really an excellent talk. We had him as the after-dinner speaker, and I suspect in many people's minds he was very much the highlight. Of course, our conference is always closed by Sam Dixon. And Daniel, I know that you have met Sam. He's a very eloquent and persuasive guy. He almost always gets a standing ovation. So yes, I think it was a very successful conference. But even more than the speakers, as I always point out to people at the beginning of the conference, it's all very well for us to have what we think is a good lineup of speakers, but it's the people who come who are the key ingredient. And we like to leave a lot of time for coffee breaks, lunch breaks, cocktail parties, so that people can mix and make networks and discuss strategy. That's in some respects the most important aspect of the conference. And that's always very, very successful. There was a real sense of moving forward, of enthusiasm, and I very much hope that we won't have problems with the state park in terms of trying to arrange for next year's conference.
Sounds great. And once again, congratulations on a very successful event from everything I've heard. And I guess we have to let you go because we have our next guest waiting. But
of course,
any final words? I mean, everyone can find your content at amren.com. Do you want to plug or recommend anything else?
Yes, I can add that all of our conference talks are always recorded by video. And so we plan to get them up in the next few days. So even if you are banned from visiting the United States, you can still hear the conference talks. But as I say, the real excitement that people have is being in a room full of 300 people, all of whom understand what's going on. I remember one fellow years ago, he was coming to a second or third conference, and he walked in and he said, "It's great to be among the living." And that's the feeling you have at an American Renaissance conference.
I totally agree.
The night of the living instead of night of the dead. That's good.
That's right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me on. And I apologize, I'm a little bit late getting wired up here. But thank you so much, and best of luck with your program here.
Thank you. We'll have to meet on neutral ground somewhere. I don't know, South America.
Yes. Slovenia.
Maybe. Yeah. Good idea.
Thank you.